Do you feel powerless, unseen, unheard, unvalued? Are you living an inauthentic life driven by the expectations and demands of others? A life dictated by your past, your wounds, your scars? Well, it's time to break free. Join Ellie Shefi and her special guests as they guide you on a journey to leave the chains of your past behind and step into a life of your own design. Welcome to You Are Not Your Scars. Here is your host, Ellie.
Hello and welcome. Today's guest is a highly decorated tech entrepreneur, former Fortune 100 corporate executive, sought-after international speaker, trainer, strategist, ICF certified coach, and mentor who is committed to creating opportunities in the startup and corporate world for diverse and underrepresented groups. He is the co-founder and executive chairman of TechPass, a career pathway platform that helps college students connect with corporate recruiters and land their first job in tech. Now, in addition to almost 3 decades of service at some of the world's largest and most prestigious companies, he is a dedicated philanthropist. He currently serves on the board of directors of the International Coach Federation Foundation and the Institute for Sustainable Diversity and Inclusion. Please welcome Latin Business Magazine's Top 100 U.S. Hispanics to Watch and Top 100 Prominent Latinos in the Business World honoree, José Piñero. Welcome, José. It is an honor to have you with us today.
Ellie, first of all, it's great to see you. What a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. What an important field that you're in, and how did you get so passionate about really empowering the underestimated and creating opportunities for diverse talent in both the startup and the corporate worlds?
This is very close to my heart. Of course, I'm Latino. Look at my name, look at my face. I was born and grew up in Puerto Rico, came to the States for college, and then worked in corporate America. And in my more than 25 years in corporate America, at some point, I led all diversity and multicultural for Microsoft, for their entire company. And at that point, I really opened my eyes to see what were the challenges, the problems, some of the hurdles that women, people of color, people from different origins, different orientations, different abilities have and face every day. And at that point, this kind of became part of my life mission. Ellie, people like you and I are very lucky. We are very lucky that we have had access to so many things. And I think it's so important for us to not only continue opening the door for other people, but to also make things easier and better for them. So that's why I'm so committed to empowering and ensuring that what I call the underestimated, which are groups that have traditionally been underrepresented, get their fair share, get their fair shot. And to do that, there's so much that needs to be done. And I'm super thrilled to be here with you today to tell you about it. But this is something that I have lived and I have seen and I have taken as a personal mission to accomplish. So I'm thrilled to be here with you. And I would love to tell you a lot more about what we're doing, how, and how other people can also join the effort and also can help make things better for the future generations.
Amazing. There is no question that there truly is disparate access to education. There's disparate access to opportunity. There's disparate access to funding. And there's disparate access to support and mentorship. So I love that you are rolling up your sleeves and leading the charge. Tell us more about how you're doing that.
Yeah. So when we look at the challenges in terms of, and I love how you put it, disparate access, we can look at 2 things. We can look at what's happening in corporate America in terms of underrepresented and underestimated groups becoming part of corporate America. And then we can also look at this from the perspective of the startup world. So let's start with corporate America. So in corporate America today, you look at the numbers, specifically when you go into tech, it's even worse. In tech, women represent only about 25% of the workforce. And then on top of that, women get paid less than men for doing the comparable job. So that's terrible and something that needs to be addressed. When we look at the percentages of the population, for example, Latinos right now, we are about 19% of the US population. We are still in the single digits in most corporate America jobs. And if we go to high tech, it's even lower. The same thing for African Americans. So I really hope that we get to parity, that we can really represent the communities in which we live and we work in the same way and in the same proportion. So there's so much there. And in a few minutes, we'll talk about COVID and the impact. But right there, we need to ensure that women, people of color, indigenous, different abilities, different orientations, that they get access to information, access to resources, that they find mentors and sponsors, that they understand basically how the game gets played, what works, what doesn't work. So a lot of this, it's about education, access to information, sharing best practices, coaching, sponsoring, mentorship, etc. So I've done a lot in that area. I've coached as an executive coach tons of people who are working in top companies. And the funny thing is that it doesn't matter where you go, you find the same challenges, the same challenges. Like sometimes when I was starting my career, I thought, well, things are very hard now, but when I get to an executive level, then things will be easy. Guess what? It wasn't. It was as difficult, as challenging. Maybe the titles change, maybe the names of the problems change, but it's the same things. These are the same things. So I think it's so, so important to provide that support. And support is something that everybody needs. By the way, there's a myth about the lone champion. She was the person who achieved this and she did it by herself. Nobody helped her. The same thing. The CEO, he did this all by himself. He moved a mountain and he achieved success. It's not real. That's not real. It's a myth.
This takes a village, right?
Yeah, it takes a village. It takes a village. I've worked with executives of companies, and luckily for them, they have an army of people. They have chief of staff, a speechwriter, communications manager, liaison, like a planner, like analyst, technical support. Like it's an army. I think also people that come from diverse backgrounds have a harder time asking for help. There's a little bit of, hey, don't rock the boat. There's a lot of cultural bias. We are raised to keep our mouth shut, just don't rock the boat, don't ask, don't make big fuss, don't ask for a lot of help. So we have to change that. And it's through education. I really think the key word here is access.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And would you say that part of the struggle maybe to ask for help or to speak up when you see the disparate access, or to speak up if you're not getting the support or there aren't the processes in place? Do you think part of that hesitancy can also be the lack of community? So if you think, well, you're the lone wolf, if you think you're the token, whatever the case may be, and you're so lucky to have been chosen, so lucky to have that spot, you're the chosen one, that maybe the notion of rocking the boat or speaking up can kind of, there's a layer of, oh, I could be replaced. There's a layer of, I don't want to be the troublemaker. There's a layer of, oh, I should be so grateful that I was chosen, that I've made it.
All of those things are true. All of those things are true. You're right. I think there are a few factors right there. One, there are cultural values. And in the work I do with seminars and leadership development, we address a lot of the cultural values of basically how we were raised, right? If you were raised in some cultures, for example, in Asian culture, silence is a sign of respect. So when the elders speak, you keep your mouth shut, you don't say anything, right? So if somebody that has grown with that value goes into corporate America, he, she, or they don't speak up in a meeting because they are just agreeing or because as a sign of respect. Guess what happens? The leader in that meeting goes, hey, I'm not sure that Paul is that engaged. I'm not sure he's really committed to this project. However, Mary, she was speaking a lot in the meeting. She's really a go-getter. She's going to make it happen. And then one person gets penalized or misses the opportunity. So that's a classic example where cultural values come into play. The other thing that is very interesting is the role models. I think it was Earl Nightingale who said something like, we define our opportunities based on what we see and what we know. So for example, if the best I saw in my community was that I could be the owner of the corner store, then that's what I aim for. But when we go to a large company, if we don't see anybody that we can relate to or that we can say, hey, that could be me. I could be the next Ellie. I could be the next John. then it's really hard for you to even visualize that that's possible. And that's
Yeah.
why moving people up and ensuring that we have the right role models, that people can see somebody that they can reflect and see themselves in that person, it's so important. There was an example. There was a very successful Microsoft executive, and he's Latino and he has a thick accent. I cannot tell you how many people told me directly later. They said, hey, because this other person, it's like the leader of the entire sales organization for Microsoft, and he has a big accent, I feel that I can also do it. So
Yeah.
again, it's like something that you need that extra kind of like push or pull from somebody. So you're
Yeah. I
absolutely
mean,
right. No community, no role models
yep.
makes things 10x more difficult for, and it's for this, for women, people of color, people from different groups, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to see it in order to even know that it's possible. You
Absolutely.
have to be
Absolutely.
able to see it. I mean, that's why I have my nonprofit, the Made to Change the World Foundation. It's
Mhm.
all about bringing in the mentorship. It's all about expanding the possibilities, allowing people to dream and to know, yes, anything you want is possible. And this is what it looks like. And there is a path that you can follow to get there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel,
Great.
and that's so much about what you do with your mentorship and the programs that you offer and the processes that you put in place and all of the workshops that you've done. It's about, to your point earlier, these are the best practices.
Yeah.
These are the processes that you can follow. These are the routes that you can take. These are what opportunities look like. These are where there are gaps in the opportunities
Mhm. Yeah.
that can be filled.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
so important.
So one of the most rewarding things that I experience every few weeks is when I'm doing some either coaching or some leadership development seminar, and you can see the moment where somebody goes, "Oh my God, that's why," right? The aha moment where they like it clicks for them. They're like, "That's exactly what happens with my boss," or "That's why I feel this way." For example, a lot of Latinos and African Americans in the workplace in corporate America, in a way, we're looking to kind of replicate the familiar and supportive bonds we have in our community. I cannot tell you how many executives have told me, hey, I wish my boss would treat me on Monday like my friends and my family treat me. They're looking for that, right? And in a way, the employee is right in wanting that. At the same time, we cannot expect the non Latino, non African American manager to know that. The Monday morning hello. If on Monday morning, the first thing I'd say, hi, Ellie, how are you doing? How's the project going? If I didn't ask you about your weekend or
Yep.
what happened,
Yeah.
you may feel that this person doesn't care about me. There's so much. So there's a lot of cultural value. Like you said, a lot of best practices. And I see the aha moments when people go like, oh my God, that's exactly why I feel this way. So the beauty of this, I believe in, let's call it, I love math in the sense that I love probabilities. I want to aim for the things that have the highest probability of success.
Yeah.
And by the way, sure, there are exceptions to everything. But if, hey, 89% of people do something and it works, most likely there's some value in there, right? So let's start with that,
Absolutely.
right? So there's a lot of understanding, a lot of education. And these are the things that I wish somebody had told me when I was starting my career. I was flying blind. I didn't know. I replicated what I did in my childhood.
Yep.
Sometimes that worked, sometimes that didn't work. And again, women, we have to help women assert their worth in the workplace. I cannot tell you how many female executives have told me, yeah, I had this idea. I said it in the meeting. Nobody kind of responded. Then some male person in the room said exactly the same thing. And everybody was so excited and supportive. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. And the sad thing is that there's an extra burden of doing extra work for us. But we
Yeah.
have to do that. Otherwise, we don't change things. So, bottom line, a lot of the work I do with companies, it's both working with, let's say, the diverse employee to help him, her, or they understand a lot of things, what works best, what are the best practices, what are the gotchas, all those things. And then also working with the non-diverse leader or manager to also help them understand how can they best work with people like us. And it's a two-way street. And we have to meet in the middle. We cannot expect the employee to do all the work. We cannot expect the manager to do all the work. They have to meet somewhere in the middle. And to me, that's a success model I have seen in working with companies.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you mentioned, I think, is so important. So I want to circle back to it. The need to essentially be seen and heard and valued and to be respected, right? Whether that looks like recognizing the cultural values or the suggestions and ideas that are done in a meeting across cultural lines. We're people. And so, really, the need to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to be supported and celebrated, those are really human values. And the majority, if you are in corporate America and you're an executive, then the Caucasian contingent, they are the majority. So they've kind of had that natural camaraderie, right? But to cross those cultural lines, to cross the racial lines, just to be human, to be a human family. I mean, there's a huge push to humanizing the workforce. I mean, Richard Branson and Virgin, they have the 100% Human at Work initiative. We've got B Corps with really using business as a force for good. We have impact economics and using business as a force for good. And so I love that you're actually saying, okay, how can we take those broader concepts and apply them to the workforce?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that it's more inclusive, it's expanded opportunities, it's more inclusive opportunities. And the magic really happens when we have that representation, the cross-cultural representation, the cross-racial representation. When a company looks like the community and it's got the open dialogue and it's got a culture of support, it's got a culture of training, it's got a culture of inclusivity, that's when innovation can really happen.
Yeah.
That's when things can become more efficient. That's when productivity goes up. I mean, all around, it's a win, 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 win.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And the best ideas come out of a conversation, of a discussion, of exchanging different points of view. The McKinsey study proves that companies that embrace diversity end up being more successful, more profitable. So there's data supporting that. And unfortunately, sometimes people go, oh, I just want the fast decision and the fast outcome. That may not be the best one. When there's some creative tension, when people say, hey, but have you thought of this? Or, hey, I saw this other thing out here. Is there any relationship to this? That's when you end up with the better plan. So it's super important to create inclusive, welcoming spaces where different people feel that they can be a part of something. I love what you said about find somebody. This is a basic human right. I joke with people when I'm coaching them and I say, hey, find me somebody that doesn't want to be valued, respected, or loved. If you find that person, I want to meet him, her, or they, because unless somebody's a sociopath or is mentally ill, that's a basic human need. And we all need that. The thing is that some people need it in some potentially different ways. And, white males in corporate America and in the VC world, they just have benefited from the privilege that they have.
Yeah.
And again, it's nobody's fault if they enjoy a privilege. But once you become aware of the challenges for other people, then I think it's our duty to make things better for others. So that's how I look at this. One thing that I want to touch, and you mentioned it earlier, is the impact of COVID on all these things and all these challenges. So let's be open. The world and the corporate world was somewhat challenging for minorities and for women before. And with what happened with COVID, which is, most companies going into hybrid or remote work arrangements, specifically when we talk about information workers, right? People who are not in the front line, consumer or customer facing. So unfortunately, African Americans, Black and brown people are quitting more than the average and than white people. And then the other thing that's happening is as companies are starting to try to pull people back into the office, more people of color and women are wanting to stay at home or to work from home more days. So let's look at the reasons for this. One, they're at home, but they're also taking care of other things that are happening with their families and their communities. Second, we may have less access to services or to nannies or to childcare or other things. And third, I also think there's something here that it could also mean some of us didn't feel as welcome as we wanted to. So we feel better at home But that brings another set of challenges because then we were talking before about speaking up in a meeting. I work with a lot of companies and a lot of teams ask me, hey, how do I show up in a hybrid or virtual world where most of the calls are like this in a Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Slack, or some kind of a video conference? And the answer is you have to be a little bit more proactive to show
Yep.
up because here's the danger. Let's take an average woman. You're doing your job. Okay, you show up to the meeting. There are whatever, 10, 12 people in the meeting. So you're basically just one tile on the screen and you're listening and you're taking notes and you agree with what's happening in the meeting. So at the end of the meeting ends and you go and do the rest of your job. If you did not say anything in the meeting, it almost feels, or some people, some leaders may think that you're not there, that you don't care, that you're not committed, that you are multitasking. So it's kind of an extra onus on us. Not only we have to be there, but we also have to make sure that our presence is felt because
Yes.
out of sight, out of mind. So for
Yeah.
example, I coach people that no matter what, you have to say something in the meeting.
Yep.
You cannot be
Absolutely.
silent. And here's the joke or the question. People say, well, but what if I agree with everything and I don't have any questions and I don't have anything to add? And then the feedback I give, the suggestion I give to people is at least say that you agree with somebody,
Yep.
what somebody said, and even better, ask a neutral, clarifying question. So don't ask a question to say, hey, Ellie, I'm not sure what you said is right. No, don't do that. Or don't challenge somebody. But if you say, hey, Ellie, I love what you shared at that point about inclusion. Is there anything that we can also bring from this other effort into this? Or, hey, I love where you're going with this idea. Can you tell me more? And right there, it's a completely neutral to positive statement. It opens the door for more conversation. And you, as an employee, you get the points for participating. And then psychologically, people, okay, he or she is involved, he cares, etc. So we have to work with those things. Another thing that is very important, it's also how you show up. Some people are in the meeting, but the camera's there and they're like looking to the side or looking down. You don't feel they care. We had these meetings with this executive and he kept turning off the camera because he was eating. And at some point, we had to say, hey, it's not cool for you to be eating. Even if you just turn off the camera, right there, the subliminal message you're sending to all of us is that you don't care that much.
Yep.
So again, you have to think through those things. And sometimes people put something in the chat than to say, hey, I want to add something, or I want to just say that I agree with what Ellie said, blah, blah, blah. It's hard. It's harder, but we have to do that. Otherwise, you kind of fall farther behind, and that's not good for anybody.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, to your point of out of sight, out of mind, I think it is so important in this Zoom universe to speak up, to have your presence not just seen, but felt. And I love the action item, that tip and trick that you've given that anyone can use, whether you are in corporate America or whether you're an entrepreneur, or it doesn't matter. We're all living on Zoom these days. And I love the idea of acknowledging and asking a follow-up question. And even if that follow-up question is, tell us more about that, or is there anything else we can do? That is an incredibly powerful question because it shows not only that you're present, but that you're paying attention, that you're engaged, and that you care. So
That's
valuable.
That's it.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Super important.
Showing that you care goes so long because there are all these research studies on employee satisfaction. And one of the key things, and I would say there's so many hot topics right now because of the pandemic and the future of work. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But engagement is one of the key metrics. Leaders want to know that their teams are engaged. And engage means showing up and showing that you care, taking action, right? So it's so important. I work with all these companies that have all these engagement tools now, and engagement is a super hot topic. The other one is well-being, which is how do we ensure that our people are all right? And no point in history has well-being in the workplace been more important than now. So the pandemic brought a lot of challenges and a lot of hardship and a lot of unfortunate things. On the other side, the pandemic has accelerated the need for all these, call it systems and services that are going to support employees and are going to make employees feel more engaged, rewarded, purposeful, more included in the work. So there's a good side of what happened because a lot of companies thought they had 3 to 5 years to figure out, hey, what's the future of learning and development? What's the future of benefits? What's the future of diversity and inclusion? How can we make the employee experience better, right? And
Yeah.
COVID basically said all the things are needed now, right?
Right
And
now.
yeah, the challenge here, if we had asked companies 3 years ago, do you trust your employees to work from home and to not whatever waste their time or be
They
lazy?
would have said
They would have
absolutely
said
not.
absolutely not, no way.
Absolutely not.
People would have said, hey, if I cannot walk around and look over the shoulder, like it sounds awful, but people would have said that. And then
Yeah.
guess what happened? And now we all having to work. And frankly, what matters is the outcome. What
Yeah.
outcomes are you producing? When I talk to a lot of people who are looking for jobs or switching careers, and they go into interviews, and they ask people ask the classic question, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself, right? And people think that that question is about you telling your life story. It's not. That question, it's the setup for you to basically say or tell that person across the table what value are you going to deliver for that company. Ultimately, we get paid, companies pay us to solve a problem, to fill a gap, to manage something, to take care of something, or to increase revenue or lower cost. That's what companies pay us. I have coached people. It's kind of funny. Tell me a little bit about yourself, or why are you a good fit for this job? And the person starts saying, well, I'm a great fit because I'm looking for this and I'm looking for that and I want this. This thing is very important to me. And I'm like, it's not about you. When you're interviewing, it's all about what can you do for the company. And when I tell people that, people kind of in the first reaction is like, oh, like they don't feel good. But it's a really good shifting frame here, because if you go into an interview by you saying and clearly communicating the value you will bring, the outcomes you'll create, they're going to want to hire you. It's a mind shift here.
And that's so important because there's a lot of openings in a workforce right now, and there's a lot of people looking for jobs. And so that's a really powerful tidbit that I want to highlight. It's not about you, it's about how you can serve, it's about the value that you can bring. We've been talking a lot about in a corporate setting, but so much of this also applies to entrepreneurship, or if you're in the VC world, the venture capital world. And so I would love to dive in a little bit more specifically. If you are looking to launch your own business or diversify your own business or scale your own business, if you're in kind of that startup model, we know that there have historically been quite a few additional hurdles for underrepresented communities in securing capital, in securing the infrastructure needed to really get their business up and running. And so I love the tidbits that you're giving, because I also think that coming from that place of what's the value that you bring, how can you serve, how can you help, I would venture to say that goes a long way with investors, that goes a long way with securing capital as well. So that's a multidimensional tip that you just gave.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's shift gears and talk about the startup world and underrepresented groups. I love using the word underestimated, because it's like, hey, people underestimate us, people underestimate women, people underestimate people with certain abilities. So as we were talking, I spent about more than 25 years in corporate America. And then during the last year, I have immersed myself in the startup world. And I went in, frankly, not knowing much. I know my experience from the corporate world and creating products and things, but I went into the startup world, and guess what I found? Same challenges.
Yeah.
Very little female representation, very little African American, Black, Latino, people of color, indigenous, etc. So a few things there. One, the startup world, I think, is so important because it's an engine of economic growth.
Yeah.
And it's also an engine for empowering communities. I say this because it's proven. When you have a female CEO or co-CEO, guess what happens? The company hires more women. When you have a diverse leader, guess what happens? More people, and it could be a function of both deliberate effort from the leader, but also going back to the role modeling. If I see, hey, there's a company and here's the leader, she's inspiring, and I can see myself being like her, then you get attracted to that and then you also join that. And then the startup world is fascinating because it's where a lot of the innovation is happening. Again, like you said before, it's all about solving problems, right? When you're in a startup, your job is to solve a problem that either tons of companies have or tons of people have. And if you solve the problem the right way, people are going to give you their money because it's a value exchange. When we go to a coffee shop and we pay $5 for the coffee, the $5, it's a good deal for us if the experience, the flavor and the taste and the experience, then I'm happy to pay $5. And guess why? How we prove that? It's great value because I keep doing that, right? I go to the coffee shop I love every other day and I get a coffee. People talk about McDonald's, right? If you pay whatever, $3.99 and you get a burger and fries, whatever, it's great value for what you pay. It's great value. Again, if you buy a Tesla, it's great value. You get an amazing car and experience for what you pay. So the point is people are very happy to pay money if the value they receive is greater. So when we move into the startup world, I love technology. I love that it presents scalable solutions. And I think that if we want to continue elevating women and communities of color, etc., we need to get those groups to not be just consumers of solutions and technology, but the creators and producers. And that's why it's so important that we bring in more women, more people of color into this world. There are so many opportunities. And like you said, there are some challenges. The first challenge is basically lack of information and guidance. The venture world has been historically white male, and that's just what happened. It was kind of a club, right? You would get in, you would work for one of these VC firms or one of the startups that were successful. By the way, it's a hits model. People love betting again and again on people that have been successful. So the hardest thing is raising your money for your first startup and then being successful. Once you're successful one time, you're golden. You can then continue like recreating, etc. And there's some data, for example, TechCrunch has some data. We have seen increases in the funding for early stage startups for African Americans to go up in the last couple of years. Unfortunately, for Latinos, for Latinx, it has been flat. So that's an issue. A bunch of us got together a month ago to discuss this problem because we need to make sure that we see that increment in the funding. But again, the most important thing is access to information, sharing success models, sharing best practices. Like we said before, making sure that we ask for help. And there are many resources, female, brown, and Black entrepreneurs who want to go into the startup world. They shouldn't go or start alone. They should
No, absolutely
they
not.
should work with accelerators, incubators, startup studios, mentorships, because there's so many things that you are going to face the same challenge. If you work with any of these other organizations, you may be able to learn from the best practices and avoid some very common mistakes. The other thing I'll say is there's so much content online, Y Combinator, like video series and all these other groups. There's so much information out there. So if you have time, anybody has time, they can learn more. But to make a long story short, one of the efforts I'm doing is helping diverse founders start their ventures, start their companies. So if anybody's interested, if you're a female, Black, brown, special abilities, etc., please reach out to me because I can point you in the right direction. I am personally committed to bringing more diverse entrepreneurs into this world and to point them in the right direction. So every week I'm talking to 3 or 4 entrepreneurs, some great, some brilliant ideas, some others that are harder to execute. What I want to make sure people understand is that there's huge opportunity. There's huge opportunity. Companies today have problems that they want to solve and they don't have a technology solution for that. People, the world's changing, keep thinking about new categories. What are the services that people may need in the future? And stories are really funny. Like Airbnb had to like change a couple of times. Uber was a disaster in the beginning. And these are now $billion companies. So it's not crazy for somebody to say, hey, I have an idea, raise a little bit of money, do a minimum viable product, show that it works, get some people excited, raise more money. And then suddenly a year, 2 years later, that company may be worth 10, $20 million. And you would have ownership of that. And your employees, the people that join you, ideally people that follow you, they also may benefit from that valuation and from that equity. So it's a
Absolutely.
wonderful model, and people don't know enough about it. I go into some of these groups and we look at each other, small percentage of women, small percentage of black and brown. So we really need to invite more people and create the right environments so more people also create technology solutions that will empower us.
Absolutely. To your point, there are a lot of resources that are available. There are so many groups that are out there, whether you find them through your local chamber of commerce, whether you reach out to a local university and find out what organizations or groups they have at the business school, for example, reach out to the Small Business Association, reach out to chambers of commerce, look on Meetup. I mean, there are so many incredible organizations and groups where you can find mentors, you can find other people who are further along on the journey. And a lot of these resources are free. So it just takes a little bit of searching. They can reach out to you for sure. But I think for so many people, they think, I have this idea and I want to do it and it would be amazing, right? But there's
Yeah.
always the but. I don't know where to start, but I don't have the money, but I don't have the actual materials to make the prototype, but I can't get into the rooms where the decisions are made. And so I love the fact that we're highlighting that these resources do exist. And
Yeah.
it's just a matter of doing some research, of finding them, and then reaching out, asking for help, asking to join, asking for a call, setting up a call. Just get into circles of like minded individuals, get into circles of people who are looking to take inspired action, who are looking to make a difference, who are looking to do the things that you want to do, especially circles where they have people at different stages of the journey. So people who are farther along. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There's no need to go it alone. There's no need to try to slog through and make all of the mistakes. I mean, if you can find someone that's already done it and they can say, here, take my hand, let me guide you. Oh, don't step there. That's a really big landmine.
Yeah.
That's going to derail you, or that's going to cost you a lot of money. Or here, let me show you this shortcut. I mean, that's really how change is going to happen in the entrepreneurial space, in the VC space. Get into those circles, build the community, empower one another.
So yeah, this is a nice segue because I'm working on something that kind of bridges these two worlds. We created a startup called TechPass. And TechPass, it's a classic startup company. It's really exciting because it's a platform to connect diverse college students with high-paying jobs in tech. So to your point, people don't know, like freshmen and sophomores in college, they're like, oh, I hear about all these high-paying jobs in technology, but I don't know how to get one. I don't know where to start. So guess what we created? We created a platform that gives the students a guided roadmap so they can see exactly what are the steps they need to take, what are the trainings they need to take, what are the activities, the meetups, what are the resources available. And we basically show the roadmap for the student. And then when the student completes a certain part of the roadmap, we tell them, hey, you're ready. We can introduce you to a recruiter at company X. The recruiter wants to start to get to know you. So the recruiters from the companies, they get to meet the students earlier than ever. They start building a relationship. And then guess what happens? If you do the things that we recommend, you're going to be a great candidate to win an internship or a real job. So we're marrying that the need, students need the guidance. Student needs to know, hey, what are the things and the steps I need to take? Because by the way, if you don't come from the right network, you may not have somebody saying, hey, here's what you need to do. Let me tap on your shoulder and bring you this way, right? So we're doing that. And companies are hungry to discover amazing, diverse talent as early as possible. So it's a platform, it's called TechPass. The URL is techpass.ai. Check it out. It's a wonderful system that connects students and companies. So we're very excited about that because that will get more diverse people into technology so they can learn how to program, they can learn about data science jobs, etc. And then we're also helping companies because they're going to find greater talent. We go beyond what a company typically sees on the radar. And we do a really good job at presenting the candidates in the best possible way. We kind of joke about it. It's more than the resume. We want to share your story. And hey, many of us have great stories about not only here the classes and here the jobs, but here's what I do for my community. Here's some challenges I had to overcome. Here's something interesting about my personal experience. And we want to present that whole story. So we're very excited about TechPass. We're doing the pilot right now in the Midwest with about 12 companies, and it's going very well. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to open doors for more diverse talent to get into technology. And that's just one example of a startup, right? People have all kinds of ideas. And like you said, find the resources, ask for help. Easily, anybody can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's very easy. Just reach out. I heard a recommendation and advice from this person, Mickey Ibarra. He was an advisor to President Bill Clinton. He said to me, "Hey, Jose, what's the most powerful word in the English language?" I'm like, I don't know, maybe love? He said, it's a 3-letter word. So I'm thinking, yes, Y-E-S. He's like, no, that's not it. He said, Jose, the most powerful word in the English language is the word ask. You need to ask. If you don't ask, you're not going to get. You need to learn how to continuously ask. Ask for what you want. Ask people for help. Ask people questions, but ask. And it was an eye-opening experience for me. I'm like, wow, I never thought of it that way. And sometimes we don't want to bother people. Sometimes we just want to take care of people and don't rock the boat. We need to ask. We need to ask, and we need to think about what do we want to achieve and then go for it.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. Ask. Use your voice. Get clear on what you want. Get clear on what you need. Get clear on where you want to go. Find the resources, find the support, and then ask. Ask for help. Ask for what you need. Ask for recommendations. Ask for referrals. Ask, ask, ask. I love that. So really quickly, what would you say is your best tip for resiliency or coping for someone who asks and then maybe hears a whole lot of no? How can you help them to continue on?
So I like knowing my odds. I like knowing my probability. For example, in the startup world, it's a 90% plus rejection business, right? You're going to ask 100 people, 90 are going to say thanks, no, not interested, not now, talk to me later, etc. So once you know that up front, then you don't feel bad. The other line that I like, and a friend of mine gave this one to me, is the following. When you get a no, you can think about this. A no is a step closer to a yes. Because now you know that that person's not ready, but you learn from that conversation and you go to the next one. So you need to know the probabilities and not take these things personally. By the way, on the startup world, I would say it's not for everybody because the rejection and the challenges are huge. Somebody asked Elon Musk a few months ago, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs? What kind of motivation can you give to them? And his answer was pretty funny. He said, hey, if you need motivation and encouragement, then you shouldn't do it because a lot of the things he has done, these are hard things sometimes. And you have to have a real strong belief in what you're doing, that is the right thing, that you're going to find a way, while at the same time being very open and flexible because in the startup world, most of the successful startups had to pivot, had to change, had to modify things. Sometimes we think the winning idea is X, and then as you talk with 25 potential customers, you realize that what they want and what they need is something different, and you adjust for that. So you have to have that balance. The other part of well-being that comes to mind, it's more around mental health, physical and emotional health and well-being. And it's really important for people to do self-care and to take good care of themselves. Nobody can just run a marathon 24/7 for 10 years. Nobody can do that. We all need rest. We all need to take care of ourselves. We need to make sure that we have enough positive experiences. Some of us are sitting in front of a computer all day long. We need to get up and walk. We need to move. Being seated all day long is not healthy for anybody. And there's so many things, right? Some people do yoga, some people do mindfulness or meditation. By the way, I think a lot of those apps are wonderful. So I know a lot of people that use them. Pick something, pick one or two things that work for you. For some people, maybe taking a nice bath. For somebody else, maybe going out for a run. For somebody else, is just sitting and looking at nature. For somebody else, maybe talking to a loved one on the phone. But pick something that fills your spirit and that makes you feel alive and good. and make sure that you sprinkle that through your days, because a lot of the work, whether you're in corporate or whether you're doing your startup, a lot of people are going to be working very hard. So it's important to pace ourselves.
So, what do you do to fill your cup? What's your self-care routine?
I am awful at this. So, a couple of things that bring me a lot of joy. One, going for my coffee. I drink coffee. I live in Seattle. I didn't drink coffee a long time ago. Now I drink coffee, and that's like an enjoyment moment. So, I love that. You see a lot of guitars back there. So, I play a lot of guitar. That brings me a lot of joy. When I hear a song on the radio or online and I just try to figure it out and I play it, that puts me in a great zone and brings me a lot of happiness. And then doing things with family and loved ones, just conversations with my kids or with loved ones, it's something that really brings me a lot of joy. And something that sounds really weird, but I do get a lot of satisfaction and reward from doing things for other people. I do believe in service. There's a quote, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something about it's one of the life's purposes is for us to get lost in the service of others, something like that. I think when we are providing service to others, it's something really beautiful and it brings me a lot of joy. I'm saying that, by the way, don't neglect yourself, because I believe in the oxygen mask in the airplane analogy. You have to put the oxygen mask on you first before you can help those people around you. If you don't put the oxygen mask and you help everybody else and you don't put the oxygen on you, you die. So put the oxygen mask first, take good care of yourself, and then be of service to others. So that brings me a lot of joy. And then a lot of other little things. I love reading, so I'm super curious, and reading brings me a lot of joy. I'm kind of a nerd for like useless factoids about a lot of things in life. Things that bring a smile to my face are really good for the heart and for the mind.
Absolutely. And you definitely live a life of service. You definitely live a life of impact. You bring so much joy to the world. You show up so powerfully in the world. As we start to wind down here today, let's imagine that you've come to the end of your best life. It has been your life just full to the brim, your life best lived. What do you want them to say about you when you're gone? What do you want to be remembered for?
My personal motto is very simple. It's leave things better than I found them. And I do my best. I try to live that and to embody that every day. And to me, there's a kind of a very easy way to think about it. And that's as follows. It doesn't matter who it is or what happens. If I have an engagement or I have a conversation with you, I hope that at least you feel a little bit better than before we met, a little bit more uplifted, a little bit more excited about the future, a little bit more encouraged about what you're doing and possibilities. And it doesn't matter whether the conversation was a 2 minute conversation or a 2 hour conversation. I think we all have the power to do that. I want people to feel better. I want people to think, hey, whatever engagement or interaction I had with him, he made me feel good. He was able to show me something greater than what I believe at the time. So that's how I want to live life. And sometimes it's not about the humongous things you do, it's about the many, many, many smaller things you do. And then when you look at that from a very macro perspective, you can see the trend and you can see the impact. So that's how I think about this. And of course, I want to make sure that more people, what I call the underestimated, so women, Black and brown, and other diverse groups, end up in a better place. And that's why we're doing TechPass. That's why I'm doing all the work with startups. That's why I do the work with corporations, because there's a lot of upside there and a lot needs to be done. And I think it's up to us to make that change. So 20, 30 years from now, I want to be able to look at numbers from companies and say, yeah, women are not 25% of the workforce in tech companies. Women are 55%. I want women to be more than half. I want people of color to be represented at a minimum at the same level as they are in the general population in the US. So those are some benchmarks for me to think about. So that's it. Hopefully helping make things like better for others.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Again, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the opportunities that you create and the communities that you build and the people that you nurture. I know that this legacy that you envision, you're living it every day. You're creating it every day. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for all the work you're doing to also drive incredibly powerful, super positive social impact and creating opportunities and helping people achieve their dreams. I think that's super important. And I applaud you for your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of You Are Not Your Scars. Be sure to implement the tools and strategies shared today as you create a limitless life. Know that you are worthy, you are resilient, you are unbreakable, and you are unstoppable. Find more episodes of this podcast at youarenotyourScarsPodcast.com. While you may have been forged by fire, you are free by design.